So, after years of waiting, Insomniac Games have finally delivered Spider-Man 2 for the PS5, and it really is a bigger game in every way. Bigger action, bigger story, bigger stakes, bigger file size, and this was the game that kept me excited from start to finish. But outside of the main story, is there really that much different? Is there really that much to separate it from the first two games? And have enough risks been taken? Let's talk about it now. Hi, I'm Chris, the Geek figure fan, and yes, this is not a figure review. I mean, I haven't done a video game review on here before, and to be honest, I don't really play as many video games as I used to, as many video games as I'd like. You know, life gets in the way, I suppose. But one of, if not my favourite game of the last few years, was 2018's Spider-Man from Insomniac Games for the PlayStation 4. And similarly, the PS5 launch title, Spider-Man Miles Morales. That first Spider-Man game blew me away with the way that it was able to tell, you know, an engaging and exciting story with stakes and emotion, whilst also being a kind of crazy good game at the same time. I loved everything about that game. It was like, I mean, I'm not a completionist, but I think it was one of the first games that I ever platinumed, you know, and I felt so impressed by it, even though it's probably a relatively easy game to platinum. So I think that's probably why I felt the need to make a review for this, because I have a lot of love for this franchise and a lot of love for Spider-Man games in general. I've always enjoyed playing Spider-Man games, and I think every time I buy one, I'm always hoping for, you know, that ability to feel like Spider-Man, to get swept up in, you know, the swinging and the traversal and the emotion of a really engaging Spider-Man story. And I think with this game, if we focus on the story first, this is an amazing story. And I don't want to give anything away, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. But I think this story is even better than the first game. And I thought the story in the first game was fantastic. It really takes it up a notch in this second game. Now, you know, from all the stuff that we've already seen, all the stuff that's been released in the promo material, we know that Peter's going to come up against some new foes that he hadn't met in the first game, namely Kraven the Hunter and, you know, the Venom symbiote. And the way that that plays out over the course of the sort of 15 to 20 hour story took me in directions I didn't expect. But it's still such an emotional story at heart, and I love the way that Peter's arc and Miles's arc feel separate and unique in their own way, but they interlink together so well, so beautifully. Just a really smart story being told, but even on a greater scale than the first game. And when I say the first game, really, I'm kind of encapsulating those first two games as one story. I think that's kind of how I saw it. And I will say, I replayed Spider-Man PS4 and Miles Morales in preparation for this game coming out. You know, that's how excited I was about it. I made sure that I played the first games to sort of refresh my memory on what the story was. But in actual fact, for those of you that are concerned that you won't remember, I will say that there is a brief sort of previously on, an optional previously on that you can watch at the start of the game to sort of refresh your memory and get you back into the swing of things, so to speak. But yeah, the story's kind of the one area that I don't want to get into too much detail on, other than just to say it was epic and I was floored by it at times. I cannot wait to see where they go next, if they decide to go anywhere next with it. But I'm going to talk quickly about some of the key components that go into this game. So let's talk about combat. I think that was one of the things that at times felt very similar to the first game. I mean, the combat system itself is almost identical. There is a new mechanic, a new parry mechanic. So when certain enemies are fighting you, you'll have an additional visual notification to parry that enemy that would otherwise have an unblockable attack. So that's kind of an interesting way to keep it fresh. But other than that, combat is copy and paste effectively from the first game, and your fingers will get tired from spamming square a lot. But that being said, the combat system in the first game was great. You know, it was very Arkham Asylum-esque in the way that it works with its hit and its parry and its block abilities. But it didn't feel like there was a great deal of new elements within the sort of combat. But I suppose it's another one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of situations. So I'm glad that they didn't mess too much with with combat. I will say that fights are bigger. It felt like there is a lot more combat heavy missions and less in the way of stealth. But that being said, with certain new powers, like we've seen in the trailer with the web line, you can create your own stealth even in situations in buildings where there aren't necessarily areas where you can hang, where you can perch and create those sort of takedown scenarios in the way that you want.
But I think the combat really goes to another level when Peter starts wearing the Venom symbiote suit. The fights just feel so energetic and fun, and you get that sense of not quite being in control of this new power whilst feeling more powerful yourself, and the rage type power that you get is so much fun. Just one hitting everybody for 5-10 seconds is fantastic. So that's a real highlight of combat, the Venom symbiote portion.
Boss fights feel radically different though. They feel massive in comparison to the first game. And one of the things I do love is the health meter that's now available on boss fights as well. So yeah, really impressed with the boss fights. And even though I knew, when my enemy was down to his last few breaths, it still felt like I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen next in a boss fight. So I really like that. Those boss fights felt a lot more organic than just how it felt previously, like there was a phase 1, a phase 2 and a phase 3 of a fight, and once you got through those 3 phases the boss was generally dead or incapacitated. So even though there's clearly rigid structure to these fights, it did feel as though those fights ebbed and flowed a little bit, and that created a lot more engagement from me within the sort of the boss battles. And there are a lot of bosses to fight. There is a lot that hasn't been revealed in the trailers, and I can't wait for people to see it for themselves. But let's talk a little bit about what we have seen a lot of in the trailers, and that's traversal. So in the first game, I know one of the minor criticisms that a lot of people had was kind of the speed of swinging around the city, and how it felt a little limited, maybe a little on the slow side, and I think that was down to kind of the processing power of the PS4 and how it was unable to speed it up any more than that due to the fact that the city is loading, is building as you're swinging, and it limited the ability to swing at certain speeds. But in this game, that feels completely different. There are a lot of mechanics that involve a lot in the way of high speed movement, and that includes the introduction of the web wings. So this wingsuit that feels very Just Cause-ish gives you this additional method of travel now, which lets you get from place to place, especially in areas where you're unable to web to a building, in a really interesting and fun and different way. And there are also wind tunnels throughout the city which kind of speed you up, shoot you along a straight line, give you the ability to get from place to place even quicker. So I really liked the wingsuit, although I would say that I still preferred swinging. Swinging is just so much fun. The web suit served a purpose for me, but web swinging was still where I wanted to be. And you got plenty of opportunity to web swing as well. And one of the other major changes to traversal is this ability to instant fast travel. That blew me away. So once you've unlocked a region or a district to a certain level, you unlock fast travel within that area, and then you can literally go onto the map and then hold down triangle for 1.5 seconds, and it locks in your fast travel to that particular point, and then it's just instant. Screen loads up, you're already swinging, and away you go. It's crazy how good that instant travel is. And yet again, I still found myself swinging more than I was using fast travel. That will come into play when I start grinding for all of the little collectibles and stuff, and then it's just dead easy to move from place to place. But even so, it just encapsulates the processing power of the PlayStation 5 and how much this new system has changed the way that Insomniac games are able to offer so many options with how to travel, how unrestricted that travel is really. And we've touched on collectibles, and I think if I just talk about like side missions, collectibles, fights, crimes, all those little bits that you remember from that first game that gave you the ability to spread the story out. I mean, the side missions are fantastic. They feel just like normal story missions for a lot of it. And whilst if we touch on the crimes, I was never a fan of them, and I'm not a fan of these kind of things in any games. It's filler, and it still feels like filler in this game. even though there's a little bit more variety to them. It's not so much, you know, that there's just 3 types of crime and you are stopping the same 3 types of crime everywhere. There's a little bit more variety, but not much. I found myself doing the bare minimum of crimes to level up my district, and then I was just ignoring the crimes because they do grate on you a little bit, or they did for me. You know, if that's something that you love, then great, but I just found myself starting to ignore them after a while. And it's the same with the collectibles. There are so many collectibles in this game, and I think I just got a bit bored of it after a while. I'm sure I'll go back and I'm sure I will grind to get the 100% on this game. But yeah, it's not really changed from the last 2 titles, really. But speaking of collectibles, there are so many suits to collect in this game. Insomniac Games really have thrown the kitchen sink at suits, and that includes now with so many suits having multiple colours that you can choose from as well for your suit. So each suit then has 4 suit variants as well. Absolutely nuts. Really is. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to love about this game, with a few niggles and a few elements that I feel are just a bit samey and haven't changed a great deal from the first game. So I mean the last one really to talk about is the map. So the map has almost doubled in size, and we now have 2 new areas of the map, which, you know, means you're going to need to grind a little bit more for all these collectibles, but it does make the game feel bigger in scale, and these new areas look distinct in their own right as well. I loved exploring, you know, Queens. It was fantastic just seeing that area that we hadn't seen before. So yeah, I had no real issue with the map, and I know that I've seen, you know, some complaints that this game is taking place in New York again. Well, yeah, of course it is. It's Spider-Man. You get your friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man and you want to take him out of his neighbourhood. And maybe they will do in a future iteration if they ever do, but no, I want to see him in New York City. You can change this game in plenty of other ways to keep it fresh without having to change the map, in my opinion. So no, I was pleased that we were still in New York. It's his home, but it does mean that if you've played the previous games, this one is really easy to just pick up and get straight into it. I found myself, you know, working my way around the city, knowing the particular areas, even though I've never been there. It just felt really easy to navigate already. So yeah, big fan of that. I'm really glad that they kept the map the same, but with some added benefits and an extension to the square footage as well, which is great. But yeah, if I just bring it back to the story really before we wrap up, so much emotional depth in this story. You know, the way that Insomniac Games play with the symbiote and how it affects Peter, and how that affects his relationship with Miles, and how that affects their relationships with other people. It's all about in these interpersonal relationships in this game, and how they can be stretched and repaired, but without losing that, you know, adrenaline fueled, bombastic explosions, danger and excitement that you expect from one of these Insomniac games. And I will say especially the ending of this game, the last third of the game, is unbelievable, spectacular, you might say. I could not get over how much I loved the end of this game. So yes, in summary, it has some issues. It's not a perfect game. I didn't notice a great deal of glitches, but I will say that some of it feels a little bit samey with regards to what you're doing and how you're doing it, but the story makes up for it. It's such a good story, and it kept me hooked. So yeah, absolutely go out and get this game if you are a fan of the first 2 installments. You will not be disappointed. I don't give scores, you know, I don't know what I would give this. Probably like an 8.5 out of 10, something like that. That's kind of where I put it. I think the first game for me has that wow factor because it was so different to what I'd played before, and it hit so many of the expectations or so many of the hopes that I had for a Spider-Man game. And this one still follows through with that, but I suppose some of the shine has gone from that, you know, the initial wow of being able to swing through the city. But this game is fantastic in every way. Go out and get it. But yeah, that's it from me. Please hit a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to review any more games. I don't get a lot of time, but if it's for all of you, then I would more than, you know, I would happily call in sick for a few days and play another game. I tell you what as well, it gets me excited about Insomniac's Wolverine game as well. I'm sure that will also be great. Hopefully a little bit different as well. Who knows? But yeah, really looking forward to what comes next. Please also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hugely helps me out. I'm still on a push for my first 500 subscribers, nearly there. So please help me just get over that milestone, that'd be fantastic. All of the love and support I've had so far has been amazing. This has been a fantastic journey so far. I love doing this channel and I will continue to do it for as long as I can. And unfortunately I haven't got a Spider-Man video to point you to. But if you're interested, why not check out this video next? Thanks ever so much for joining me today. Everyone take care. Bye bye.